Welcome to Northeastern Christian Apologetics. My name is Simon, and you are out here with me in Connecticut, in the wilderness of Connecticut. And today we're going to be talking about the importance of apologetics and how it relates to the Christian life and why it should be considered in your devotionals. What is apologetics? So there's a couple different views on apologetics and the methodologies of apologetics and what you ought to be doing if you are an apologist. But what I would just say that the purpose of apologetics is to strengthen faith. Apologetics doesn't replace faith, it helps strengthen it. It shores up faith. Many Christians are Christian because of an experience that they've had, or that it just seems intuitively obvious to them, or that they just feel it, they feel that it's true, that God's presence is there and with them. But many older Christians have experienced a drought in their spiritual life where they don't readily feel God's presence. He's not real. You can't feel him, you know what I mean? So that's where something like apologetics can come in. Apologetics can give people a reason to continue to believe in God even through those tough times where it seems like God is distant and it doesn't feel like he's there. So there are different methods for going about doing apologetics. I'm going to talk about two main ones here. First, I'm going to talk about presuppositional apologetics. So presuppositional apologetics is the idea that you presuppose the Christian worldview. That is, that God exists, that he created the universe, and that there's nothing that was created that wasn't created by God. Jesus is the Messiah, all of Christianity. You presuppose that it's true. And in order for you to reason correctly in this world, is you can only do so if you believe in Christianity. And that anyone who believes that they can reason correctly presupposes the Christian worldview. And by rejecting the Christian worldview, they're only borrowing attributes of the Christian worldview in order to reason correctly to begin with. A subcategory of presuppositional apologetics is called Expository Apologetics, and this is championed by Dr. Vodi Bakum. And the point of expository apologetics is it's like presuppositionalism in that you presuppose the Christian worldview, but you defend Christianity by espousing the creeds and the Bible, So what you do is you use the Bible in order to explain to people and to convince them that what they really do believe in is Christianity. And that anything that's false in their worldview they should just get rid of. And anything that's true is only true because Christianity is true. And I personally find presuppositional apologetics and expository apologetics very appealing because the presuppositionalist he describes it as putting God in the judgment seat, where the person who doesn't believe in God is on trial. Why do you believe what you believe? By what standard is that true? And therefore God is on the judgment seat. Like, the only reason why you believe what you believe, or the only reason why you believe the true things that you believe, is because deep down you know that God exists. And you recognize those truths because you recognize that God is true. So that's presuppositional apologetics. The second method for apologetics I'm going to talk about is classical apologetics. And this is the apologetics that I'm more familiar with. This one uses reason and evidence in order to show that Christianity is true. This one uses philosophical argumentation and archaeology and things of that nature to demonstrate that the Bible and God, that the Bible is true, that God exists, that Christianity corresponds with reality. And this is where we get the arguments for the existence of God from, like the moral argument, the various cosmological arguments that we're going to be going through. And like I said, this is the version of apologetics that I'm most familiar with, and the one that I would be talking about the most. But like I said, I really enjoy presuppositional apologetics as well as expository apologetics. I do not think that there is a better resource for Christian faith and knowing what the Christian believes than the Bible and the creeds. And I do not think that you can reason correctly unless you are a Christian. Now, some people will hear me say that and go, whoa, reason correctly? Like, not at all? That's a pretty bold claim. And it is a bold claim, but I think it can be backed up logically. The idea for the Christian is that philosophy is the handmaiden of theology. So in order to reason correctly, you first have to have your theology on point. You have to really understand God, and because God is the ground of reality. For the Christian and for everyone, God is the ground of reality. And if you don't have a proper understanding of God, then you are going to naturally misunderstand reality. And philosophy is nothing more than trying to find an explanation for why reality is as it is. And so if you have your theology wrong, then you're going to have your philosophy wrong. That's just the way that it is. And what I mean, you can't reason correctly, I mean ultimately. But what's the grounding of that kind of logic? You know, what's the grounding for the physical world as a whole? What's the grounding for morality? Things like that. That will, if you don't believe that God exists, then you're going to find grounding in all sorts of things, or you're going to believe that those things don't exist, when I think it's pretty self-evident that they do exist. But why do they exist? That's what we're getting at, the why. That's all philosophy is, why. But so the apologetics, the two different methods of apologetics, the main methods of apologetics are come at it from different angles, where presuppositional apologetics presupposes that God exists and everything is answered because God exists. And then you go about answering why everything that you believe is true because of God making it so. Where classical apologetics says, well, we can agree that these things are true. What explains those things that we agree are true? Well, then the conclusion is God. Where presuppositional apologetics presupposes that God exists, it's in the beginning, and then what is entailed by it. Where classical apologetics says we agree on these things, and then what is the conclusion? Why God is the result of these things. So, but either way, if you don't have your theology right, then in classical apologetics, then your conclusions are going to be askew. You're going to have difficulty finding a reason for the agreement in the first place. And in presuppositional apologetics, if you don't have an understanding of God, everything gets muddled in the end. Where, well, maybe God isn't the explanation for all this after all, because my understanding of God is flawed. Now, some might say that if theology is so important, then why even bother with apologetics? Should I be focusing more on theology than apologetics? And my answer to that is, yeah, you should be focusing more on theology than apologetics. You need to get your understanding and relationship with God right in order to do apologetics effectively. If you don't have an understanding of who God is, then you won't be arguing towards the right God or from the right God. You need to know who it is that you worship. And that is way more important than everything. So you need to be rooted in the Bible. You need to read the Bible. and then everything else will flow naturally. You can go ahead and pick up some apologetics books and start reading those, or listen to these videos, because I'm going to be going over some of the arguments for the existence of God, hopefully all of them eventually. But first and foremost, you should be focusing on your relationship with God, and then you can work on everyone else's relationship with God by arguing through love and patience and kindness and with compassion. It can be very difficult at times, because some people are very, very full of venom towards God. So you need to be grounded in prayer before you really pursue anything as far as a ministry with God. But apologetics, but why do apologetics if theology is so important? Well, not everybody studies theology, but they experience the world around them. And a lot of people come up with explanations for why things are the way that they are. But what a Christian can do is come at it from a Christian perspective, and a well-reasoned Christian perspective. This opens up a lot of people to the idea that, you know what, maybe God isn't just a fairy. God isn't just Santa Claus. And I can't so readily dismiss him just because I don't have any personal experience of him. As I said previously, most Christians believe that God exists because of personal experience. I know that I do. I believe in God because I have experienced his presence in my life. That's my primary means of knowing that God exists, is the direct experience of him, his Holy Spirit with my spirit. The arguments only strengthen that faith, because, as I said previously, it's not uncommon for Christians to go through spiritual drought, a time of testing and trial where you don't sense God's presence, and that is a time in which you can fall back on reasons and evidence to strengthen that faith when it feels that God is far from you. And this is why I think apologetics is important, is its ability to strengthen faith. Even in periods in which I have had intense drought, where God seems very distant from me, I still can fall back on these evidences and reasons in order to determine that God still exists, even if I can't feel him. And it's been an enormous comfort for me personally. And I think that it would be an enormous comfort for any Christian. And that's why I think that it's worth the time and effort to really look into it. So although apologetics isn't necessary, I still think it's a really important tool for strengthening the congregation and making Christianity a viable option for people who have intellectual related doubts, where even if they do have had the experience of God, can't reconcile it with the secular society and the naturalism that is so pervasive today. It is my hope that we can use apologetics in order to strengthen the church, to bring Christianity to a state of respect in society. Because right now, for a lot of people, increasingly Christianity is seen as mythology. It's seen as no better than the ancient Romans, Jupiter or Zeus or any of those other gods. God is seen as a fairy. I've seen him compared to a pink flying unicorn and a flying spaghetti monster. What we want to do is get rid of these old notions and present a God that is both reasonable and logically entailed and also believable. Christians, there's a lot of people out there who struggle with the idea of God even after experiencing him. We need to combat the secularization of our country, and a way to do that is through apologetics, to say that there is an intellectually viable option other than naturalism and secularism. There's no reason to eject God from the public square. There's no reason to abandon Christianity, especially when there's so much to lose. So it's my prayer that we'll be able to turn society around eventually, and to strengthen the Christian kingdom. Well, I really hope that you enjoyed this little walk with me out in Connecticut and on the trails of Connecticut, talking about apologetics and why it's important for the Christian to consider adding it to their tools for evangelism and faith-building practice. If you appreciated the video, could you please leave a like? I'd appreciate that. Please subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you next time. God bless.